Hello, good afternoon and humbug. Welcome to our Christmas Carol themed episode, joined as usual by Marcella Monroe from Macmillan Vantage and Andrew Balfour from Rubicon Strategies. I'm going to put this down before I burn the house down and pick up this instead. So we're going to explore the ghosts of stories past, present and future. We got a glimpse of the future yesterday. Mark Stroll, the Conservative MP, said that he got flung in Facebook jail because he wished his constituents a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Apparently that is against the discriminatory practices of Facebook when it comes to race and religion. If anybody from Facebook is watching, then happy winter fun time to everybody. But there are other tales from the year that's just ending that you might find worrying, noteworthy, memorable. So I wonder if we can go through those and then we can comment on each one as we go through. Marcella, do you want to start? What was particularly noteworthy for you from the last year, past, present and future?
Well, we got to start with COVID, right? I mean, talk about the Scrooge in the room. Because I think by this point, this point last year, we all thought by this point this year, we'd kind of be done and dusted with it. And we're not, of course. I think that one of the things I look back on with a, mix of sadness and annoyance and I guess sometimes humor is the communications from all levels of government around COVID. They've been so inconsistent and confusing. It's a miracle to me that Canadians have had as much patience as they've shown. But I think as we all see, everyone's kind of on the edge right now. So even as we're speaking, the Prime Minister is about to make an announcement. I feel like if he's going to be the Grinch that stole Christmas, as one of my colleagues said this morning, he's going to have a lot of trouble on his hands. But it's just another, degree of this constant churn of COVID. So, not exactly the Christmas we were wanting to start with.
Right. So that's your story from the past year. Andrew, I think you mentioned that you're also going to look at COVID from a slightly different angle.
Well, I just still find it amazing the different ways that all of the provinces and leaders have dealt with them. Like you'd think that by this point in time we would have come up with some form of a playbook, and we see even now, like a week ago, Jason Kenney loosened things up, and then yesterday they tightened things up. And then you see in different, like in Quebec, they're back in like almost a lockdown. And in Ontario, we're resisting it. And out east, they have numbers rising. It's just, there's no consistency across the provinces. And I mean, we won't even look to the south for any examples because America is America. But it's just so odd that there's still all these inconsistent measures being taken across jurisdictions in this country.
Yeah, I mean, I put out a tweet the other day saying, I can't believe, first of all, that I can't even book a booster test in Quebec. Secondly, that there are no rapid tests available. The local pharmacy has them at 3 o'clock and they're gone by 3:15. And people from New Brunswick and Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan came back and said, we've got boxes of them. They gave them out in schools. So how did that happen? I mean, presumably there's a warehouse somewhere in Quebec where there's rapid tests sitting unused. And as far as the boosters, when we knew we were going to have boosters and when we've got somewhere around 6 million doses available sitting in central inventory, that you can't get a booster. I mean, why they didn't shorten the length of period after your second shot and just start boosting people after 3, 4, 5 months, the way they have in the UK, France, Italy, Australia. It's crazy to me. And I think it's a major fail on the part of the provinces that we don't have boosters in arms.
Well, further to that, like given the fact that we have so many doses, why haven't we almost done like a conscription type method of saying, hey, if you're a retired doctor, nurse, dentist, anyone who's qualified to put a needle in someone's arm, you're now like it's warm.
Well, even veterinarians for that matter. I mean, I just don't understand why this is so challenging. Again, almost 2 years later, like it just seems preposterous.
They're running ads in Quebec as we speak, saying, if you've got time in your hands, come in, we'll train you, and you can put needles in people. But I mean, this could have been averted if they'd started in September. Okay, Marcella, how about your ghost of stories present?
Well, I think we're still suffering a bit of confusion and stupidity because we had this unnecessary federal election. So to your point about the inconsistency across the country and that we should have started boosters in September, you've got to start wondering whether that silly election that basically did nothing didn't derail the country a bit from what should have been our supreme focus on. We knew that winter was coming. We knew there was probably going to be another variant at some point. Instead, we spent like 6 weeks chasing the leaders around the country. And so, I think that that's still a ghost that's haunting us in the present. The fact that we basically lost almost 2 months because of an election that no one wanted and wasn't needed.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, what do you think of that?
Well, we all know that I disagree with that. I actually think that the election did change some things because now more parts of the country are represented by the governing party. We now have 2 seats in Alberta where there were 0. Everywhere in the whole country, other than Saskatchewan, has representation from the current government. One thing that it also did was it created a much greater cleavage, and this is not a good thing, but an outcome of it, a greater cleavage between rural and urban, because now the governing party has very, very few seats in rural areas, and it's more or less pretty much concentrated in urban areas.
But how's that a good thing?
Why
is that something that's good?
I specifically said that's not a good thing, but that's something that it showed us, is that the divide in this country is a real thing that people have been talking about for a long time, but now we can actually point to something that proves it.
What's your ghost of stories present?
Well, I guess it's a past, present, and future, but the whole Aaron O'Toole thing where, it just continues on and on. We see it in papers every day about the divides in their party, and it just keeps going and going and going. And I don't know what the off ramp is for him or the party, but it seems that right now it's getting worse. And, even this week there were some, I've said this before, but it's like when the Liberals were in opposition, there was a whole lot of unnamed sources all the time, and the Conservatives didn't used to be that bad, but now they're as bad or worse.
Well, yeah, I mean, a whole bunch of people came out talking about what happened in caucus, which is very frowned upon. But as far as getting worse, I actually think this thing may peter out. I mean, the opposition is real, but I mean, I gather they took a vote in caucus on the conversion therapy, how they approached that. So the majority clearly were on side with the leader, and I think they're still on side with the leader. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, when Harper was in charge, he didn't bring the whip down too heavily because the caucus policed itself. And I think there's going to be a lot of people in that caucus who are not talking to journalists, who are going to turn around and say to their colleagues, look, we've had enough of this. You're killing us. Stop or go. And I may be wrong. It may be that the opposition is so entrenched that they'll eventually force O'Toole out, but I tend to think not.
I think it is, but it must be entrenched somehow, because otherwise how are we getting this constant stream of stories about all this infighting, right? And I think there was...
But it's the same people.
Sure, fine, but then they're not backing down, it seems to me. And also, from what I hear, certainly the organizers in the party that want him gone, that basically want another leadership contest. And some of these people are quite sophisticated, and they've got this as something in their sights. So it will be ongoing, merry, happy fun for us watching it. But I don't see it going. In fact, I was kind of surprised. So we got 2 stories in the last week, one in the Globe and one in the Star, about this caucus meeting. Like, if it was dying down, as you suggest, if it was damping down, that wouldn't be happening right now.
For sure. I'm not suggesting it's damping down now, but I'm suggesting that it can't go on indefinitely. So one way or another, it'll resolve itself. Okay, my ghost of stories present is the ongoing fiscal situation. I got a note. The government says, well, things will be okay if inflation subsides, COVID ends, the economy grows, we don't have a trade war with the US, interest rates don't rise. None of those things are particularly good bets right now. And I spoke to a guy who was at Treasury Board leading the programme review in 1995, and he said I can see the same dynamics forming that will cause Canada to hit the wall financially with serious consequences for public services and intergovernmental transfers. I mean, I hate to be the sort of Cassandra here, but the finance minister's response to all this is keep calm and keep borrowing. She said it's a poor general who fights the last war. There's a reason why some very senior people are very nervous about the way we're going here. I know that neither of you share these concerns, but
not at the present moment. I do share your concern, though, over long period. I am hopeful. I think one of the things that made me hopeful about this evolving conversation, though, is that we're starting to have some very serious people step forward to publicly start talking about the need for growth and the need for a growth agenda. And I think that's got to be a good focus for, there's a couple of online events starting in the new year with Bay Street and natural resources CEOs coming together to talk about this agenda. I think that that's a positive move, because as opposed to, we can all sit here and get scroogey and grumpy about a lot of the factors you talked about, but surely there's a more positive conversation to have on the other side of this, which is how do we get back to having a growth conversation? What does that look like? And I really liked your piece on Minister Champagne. I think that that's a great example of something that we need to keep focusing on, which is the people that are trying to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, he's a ray of sunshine in a very, in my opinion, pretty bleak picture otherwise. Andrew has no comment.
I do. I mean, I don't. You're trying to say that I have no concerns with the borrowing and the fiscal policy where we're going. I mean, if we were where we thought we were 6 months ago, where we were coming into a recovery and Omicron wasn't a thing, then I didn't. But if this continues to go and go and go, and say that we're in a 5-year cycle of COVID, we're going to have ups and downs in the economy, then our policies right now are predicated on this ending. If it turns out that we're in a 5-year cycle, then we can't continue this, and we have to pivot away from it.
Funnily enough, although I'm the voice of gloom and doom here, I'm actually quite sanguine about the future course of the pandemic. I was reading an article the other day about US researchers in the military, I think, who are producing what they hope is a vaccine, not just for this variant, but for mutations in the pandemic or in the coronavirus. It seems to me that the science will sort this thing out, and we're not destined to have this thing every single year at the same level we're having it at this year. Okay, we're running low on time or short on time. Let's have the ghost of stories future, Marcella.
I've been really trying to stay off social media lately because I feel like it's this thing, whether it's Twitter or Facebook, whatever your poison is, where we all know it's very bad for us. We've got studies coming out saying Instagram's like really harmful, especially for young women, and yet we don't seem to stop it. And so I think that whatever is coming next in the quote unquote metaverse, I think in the future we've got to start thinking seriously about how we are managing our social media, but also like how should they be regulated? Like what are they actually doing to society, and what are we going to do about it? I also think there's a lot of really smart people working on these platforms that we could use their smartness engineering real world solutions to things like climate change. So so I'm trying to be more conscious about social media going into the future and thinking about how that could be reined in.
I mean, I was joking about the Mark Stroll situation earlier, but I mean, was that a human being who looked at that? I mean, I watched the video. It was very benign.
I kind of wondered, though,
is
it possible there were other people commenting on it that were being weird? That
I don't think so. I suspect it was some artificial intelligence algorithm which saw whatever it was. And I mean, then we're getting into dangerous terrain for sure.
If you ever want to listen to someone smart about this stuff, Kara Swisher has a podcast. And one of the things that she's been railing on about is that there's no reason these billions and billions of dollars of companies can't be having human beings do this, and instead of relying on AI. So,
yeah. Andrew, the ghost of stories future.
Well, just quickly on what Marcella just said. I mean, I generally stay away from Twitter as much as humanly possible because I find it to be a cesspool of just angry people, and it's not a good thing. Anyways, my future is also something in the present, but in the future when Joe Manchin, who possibly we should give the Order of Canada to if he does succeed in quashing this and making it so we don't get into a mass trade dispute with the U.S. But what's coming up when the United States government resumes in the new year is this Build Back Better. That's going to be a big problem for Canada, and I think that we should be paying a lot of attention to it. And I think that the average Canadian probably isn't or doesn't know that this is going to be a big problem.
Yeah, no, I think that's not going away. I mean, I talked to Champagne about this in our interview, and he said, well, we always resolve these issues. We always have done. Well, let's see. My story for the future, or Ghost of Story's future, is the ripple effect from last January's attempted coup in the US. So I'll take your doom and gloom about the US and trump it, no pun intended. I mean, you might have thought that Trump's complicity in the January the 6th thing would have convinced some of the 75 million people who voted for him that he was a dangerous, undemocratic demagogue, but apparently not. I mean, there were 3 retired generals in the Washington Post this week warning that if Trump loses the 2024 election, and he's the prohibitive favourite to be the Republican candidate, that if he lost, that renegade military units might overthrow the result and install him anyway. At the same time, you've got Republican officials trying to take control of the electoral machinery in certain states, raising the prospect they could even install losing candidates. I'm with Christopher Hitchens when it comes to conspiracy theories. They are the exhaust fumes of democracy. But to me, there's a very real prospect of instability and even civil war in the US. And I think Canada has to take serious contingency of that prospect.
I think we can all take some joy, though, from how he got yelled at by his own people for admitting he took a booster. It was pretty good.
Yeah, maybe there is hope. All right, well, then, on that happy note, let's wish our viewers a very Merry Christmas and hope that, in Scrooge's words, the bad actors, the trolls, the mischief makers online are boiled in their own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through their hearts.
Merry Christmas,
Merry
everyone.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.